Hi, my name is Michael Cohen. I'm a Dallas elder and estate planning attorney. I'm joined by my friend Don Crawford Jr. We used to do a radio show together. And so we're continuing with nowadays YouTube, podcast. The world is changing.
Yes,
And
it
so
is.
yeah, thank you, Don, for joining us. He always seems to ask me questions that I never know what he's going to ask. So
Mm,
that's why he's joining us here today.
That's right.
Today's topic is on a Medicaid issue. Why Medicaid? Medicaid, a lot of times people seek long-term care Medicaid to help pay for long-term care, like if somebody's in a nursing home or perhaps even if they're at home. And because most people don't have long-term care insurance or their income or assets, um, is too great for eligibility and they try to get the government to help pay for care. There are certain things that do not count, and one of which is a homestead under certain conditions. If you're married, then it doesn't matter what the value of the home is. It doesn't count as a resource as long as you intend to return home if you were in a nursing home.
Okay.
So in other words, if you had $1 million home, but not too many people with $1 million homes apply for Medicaid, but even if you did, and you were married, it wouldn't count as a resource. Now, what's the problem is if that well spouse died first, then you're over the equity limit. Equity is the difference between what if you have debt versus how much the property is worth. So let's say you had a $500,000 home and the debt was 200,000, then there would be a $300,000 of equity. So when you apply for Medicaid and you're single, they look at that equity limit and determine if you're over the value that's under for resources that doesn't count.
Okay.
Last year in 2025, that was the equity limit was 730,000. This year in 2026, and Happy New Year to all if I haven't said that previously, it's going up to 752,000. So now, since there's an equity limit, what if you had, let's say you were at 760,000? How could I get below the limit? Because I have 8,000 and the limit for Medicaid of over the allowable limit is 2,000. So then I would be over the cap and would not be eligible for the government to help pay for that long-term care cost. Well, maybe you could get more debt. So you borrow against the home. Now, there's a limit to that. And then you buy something else that doesn't count. What doesn't count? A pre-need funeral, burial spaces for children, one car, personal property items. So there's certain things that do not count. Now, what if you put your home in a revocable living trust? Now, we talked about this. We had a show for those who don't listen to all the podcasts uh, or YouTube. We had a show recently about if you had your home in a revocable living trust, would you lose your property tax exemptions? Here, we're just saying, what if you have your home in a revocable living trust? Well, then if you did, it would count for Medicaid. So you could have it where it goes into the trust when you die. There are two, and this is important because not only does it not count for Medicaid, but Medicaid has what's called Medicaid estate recovery, where the state has a right, if they're going to be paying out benefits on your behalf, they have a right to go after your home to the extent, after your death, to the extent that Medicaid benefits have been advanced. So if you had $150,000 that the state paid for you being in the nursing home or for drugs, because those are both covered under Medicaid, not under Medicare for long-term care, then then if that's the case, the state has a right to make a claim against things that go by your will or by intestacy, and you can't put it in a trust or else it would count as a resource.
So,
So,
in other words, you got to pay the government back when you pass away.
right. However, you could avoid that Medicaid estate recovery by doing either a transfer on death deed or a ladybird deed because it's not going by will, it's not going by intestacy, it's going by deed. And
Okay.
it's not a subject to the 5-year look back period as far as any penalty. And the reason for that is you're in control until you die.
Um,
I had one this week where somebody wanted to change things. So on a transfer on death deed that I know that you have, you could always cancel the deed and you could
right,
change your mind.
right.
On a ladybird deed, a little bit more difficult sometimes because either you could say it depends on what the document says, you could say you either deed it back to yourself. A lot of times title companies want the ones who are the grantees to sign in on it because it's really considered to be a transfer subject to divestment. So if you get the grantees to sign off on it, then there's no problem
And
either.
with the transfer of the Todd, as we call it, the person doesn't have to be your spouse, correct? It can be anybody.
It could be anybody. And you should look at your document very closely, the one I did for you, because I might be a beneficiary.
Yeah, you might be. I better look at that. Or when I'm done this program and I start to cook dinner, I'm going to tell Sarah, this is revocable.
Yeah, you could always change your mind on a
Okay.
transfer on death deed. However, you can't, interestingly enough, you could do it, but your agent under your power of attorney cannot,
Interesting.
whereas the agent on a ladybird deed can do something different
Wow.
if
Fascinating.
you put language in there. So in
Okay.
the code, it tells certain different things that you can do with a transfer on death deed, certain things you can't do. And what's the differences? And that's why we wrote this article comparing and contrasting ladybird deeds versus transfer on death deeds, which is on my website, dallaselderlawyer.com. In fact, if you're interested in going to a free estate planning essentials workshop, you could sign up by looking at our website at dallaselderlawyer.com. That is, you could click on to saying you want to attend a free workshop, which is 2 hours. It's free. We have them every month. And we'd ask people what they want to know. And then we proceed to answer those questions, and you hear the questions from others. And for those who attend that free estate planning essentials workshop, also get a free 1 hour vision meeting with me. So 3 free hours of legal education without any cost or obligation.
And
Uh,
where are the workshops, Michael, and when are they typically?
well, first of all, they're at we have a conference center in our building, which is across from Medical City. I'm looking out at Medical City as we speak. And it's just to the north of Medical City Hospital. Medical City Hospital, for those who don't know, is at Forest, close to Central Expressway.
Okay.
It's the last, well, it's the there's a 1 mile south of LBJ. I
Okay.
guess is the best way of saying it.
Or the intersection of 75 and 635 is what the way I put it in Pennsylvania terms.
Okay, well there you go. I'm so old Dallasite that I call it Central Expressway and LBJ. I don't know the number.
I
I know
don't
the
either.
number 75 or
I just Pennsylvania terms, not necessarily old or young, but anyway. But those workshops are invaluable. You learn a lot. You get to internalize what other people ask, in addition to get your questions answered. So they're very helpful.
yeah. And I forgot to mention the telephone number if you didn't want to click online at dallaselderlawyer.com. The phone number is another way, and that's 214-720-0102. 214-720-0102. Well, thank you, Don. Do you have any final questions on that?
Nope. Thank you, Michael.
I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.